2, 1.
Welcome to episode 6 of the Racket House Podcast, where we discuss all things music and success in our fun corner of the world, helping to inspire, inform, educate, motivate, and keep hope alive for musicians, creatives, entrepreneurs, and anyone else who wants to grow their brand in the music or creative spaces. Today, I'm super excited because I get to talk to a good friend of mine who I met in LA years ago on the beaches of Santa Monica when we were both booked to play a volleyball beach party that had DJs and dancing and all kinds of fun stuff. And ever since that point, we stayed in touch. We collaborated. We made music together. We shared decks together. We had hilarious late night adventures. And I'm here to welcome Kaya to the show. And let's talk about Kaya. AKA Jean-Philippe Kaya, he goes by Kaya as his artist name. He skillfully merges his background in classical piano and film scoring with a passion for DJing and producing electronic music. Hailing from Bordeaux, France, with parents from Cameroon and Congo, and having lived across the US and Canada, Kaya draws from a rich tapestry of influences to craft his signature sound. So this is one that really gets me. He learned how to DJ during the pandemic, and his rise has been through the roof. He blends lush chords and hard drops, and it's led him across North America, sharing the decks with the likes of Pete Tong, HUGEL, Deadmau5, MEDUZA, Kaleena Zanders, KREAM, Corry, SNBRN, Todd Edwards, A-Trak, and others. That list alone is incredible. His music has been supported at the world's biggest festivals, including Glastonbury, Coachella, EDC Las Vegas, and he's had releases on Ultra Records, Quincy Boy Records, Groove Bassment, and Phantom's new label, Speed Dial, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Dedicated to his craft, Kaya continues to hone his skills both in the studio and on stage, solidifying his place in the electronic music scene, one fan at a time. Everyone, please welcome Kaya.
Oh,
I really do need it. I need to get a soundboard so I can get.
It's like a little cheer, just see like confetti's, just like
get the applause going. But I am truly excited and grateful to have you here because you're the first artist, I guess, true artist that I've had on this. Only 6 episodes in. You know, I had our friend Jay Clavette, but he is not just an artist. He wears a lot of different hats. So we had a lot of different topics of conversation there. But for today, I wanted to chat with you because just watching you over the past 4 or 5 years, ever since we met, and where you were at then and where you're at now, and the things you're doing, in my opinion, are incredible. I think you're a guy, and I'm trying to make you blush. I'm doing my best here. I think you're a guy who has an incredible skill set, is incredibly talented. I think every time I see you, you're just radiating positivity and smiling and bouncing around, and like you're this Energizer bunny that I don't know how you have the energy to do it all because you are always everywhere all the time. So yeah, super excited to have you here, and we chat for this time about all things music from your early days and your start to where you're at now and what's in the future. And yeah, excited to have you on, man.
oh yeah, thank you for having me. And you've been crushing it on these podcasts, so like I'm really thankful for you having me on, and yeah, excited to get right into it.
Hell yeah, brother. Okay.
Yo,
What's that?
let's go.
Oh, let's go. Sorry. I was pulling up my notes, man. Okay. So I kind of want to, generally like to start with kind of like your early story, giving people who don't know who you are kind of the background. Like I said, I think one of your strongest suits that I wish the talent I had, your hands on the keyboards, playing keys, is a huge asset for you. So tell us about kind of your early life, your background, when music came into the fold, what some of your influences were, if your family had anything to do with it, if where you're living or where you're from had anything to do with it. Just kind of give us that full spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I grew up from a land far away from here, across the pond. Good old France in Bordeaux, as you mentioned, which is like
Yeah,
this.
I pronounce it like a white man, like a white American man.
I'm like Bordeaux, they're like, oh yeah, you're French. I'm like, I don't know how else to say it. It's Bordeaux, like you got the R. But yeah, I mean, it's, come from, pretty humble family. My parents are immigrants from Congo and Cameroon. They moved to France like in the 70s or 80s, met there, had me and my 2 sisters, somewhat musical. I had the chance to start playing piano fairly early. I was around 4 years old when I had my first lesson. Although my first instrument that I've ever played, and I had lessons for maybe about 2 months, was trumpet. And like the thing is that in like we went to like this really small school. It was like this like Catholic, but not really. They have a different system in France, but basically the school that I went to operated really 4 days a week. So it was like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday we had classes, but school was not big enough. Like we didn't have gym class, we didn't have a gym, we didn't have any music classes. So like Wednesdays were kind of like the recreational day where like you're meant to do sports and if you want music classes at another school. So basically my sister being 4 years older, she was kind of like spearheading that at first. And then when I became four, you know, it was like, all right, I'm kind of like having this opportunity to do something. So I knew I was always kind of like musically inclined. I remember my parents would always ask like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And, you know, I would see on TV like different things. And then I remember the first thing that I saw was like this like orchestra conductor. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. Like he was just conducting like this big symphony orchestra. And I was like, that's what I want to do. Be a conductor. And then they're like, okay, so he's into music. Let's try to see. I mean, you can't really conduct an orchestra right now. You're only 4 years old. But yeah, I mean, my sister was taking piano lessons, and you know, we had a piano at home, and so I very quickly kind of got onto the piano thing. And you know, most people kind of like, you know, hate their teachers, or you know, they fall off. I was the same way. I mean, my teacher was great. She was okay. But like, you know, at 4, I'm not like practicing, you know, 13 hours a day. I was, you know, kind of distracted doing other things and being a kid.
Sure. Being a
But
kid. Yeah.
yeah, right. But, you know, along with the music, the piano classes, I also did like music theory. So it'd be like, you know, I would go like 9 a.m. I had like a piano lesson. And then right after we had like a solfège, just like music theory and everything, which was like still pretty kind of tough. But it wasn't until, so my parents had like this crazy collection of like vinyl and CDs. And I remember around the turn of the millennium, so in the year 2000, when I was 4, I was like, you know, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, it was 1997. I'm not that old, but basically we, you know, they had like this whole thing called like the triumphs of classical music and the triumphs of jazz music, which was like this huge collection that was released in the year 2000. The time, you know, I was like 6, 7. And so we got that collection. And I remember I was just listening to these CDs. And I remember, I mean, I love both jazz and classical, but really what spoke to me was like Chopin and Liszt and Beethoven. And they just had like these just crazy pieces that I'm like, how, like, what is even happening? I remember this one Chopin piece, Fantaisie Impromptue. It's just kind of like this crazy, like, it's kind of like Chopin was great at like having like a cluster of notes. Like, it's not like a distinctive melody, but then like you're playing these cluster of notes so fast that like this bigger melody kind of comes from it. So the kid, I'm like, how is this happening? And then I remember getting my hands on the sheet music, and I was like, oh yeah, I can't play this. I don't even know what this looks like chicken scratch, you know. And then, you know, I was also watching another thing. I haven't even really spoken about this, but Tom and Jerry. I was obsessed watching Tom and Jerry.
Yes.
Episode where Tom is playing like Liszt Hungarian Rhapsody on like the grand piano, and like Jerry is like in the piano trying to like mess him over. And I was just like, yo, this is like such a cool piece. And I remember that was also another piece that I've always wanted to play. So yeah, I just started like practicing a lot, and then we moved to America. So that was like kind of like a big thing. So I was like 8 at the time. You know, I was barely speaking French, and you know, I definitely did not know any English. And so here we are, you know, starting a new adventure in America, which is a different story. But basically, my mom spearheaded
I would love to hear baby Kaya speaking French. That would be the cutest thing in the world. You got to show me some home videos if you got any at some point.
Right? Yeah, I got to find some.
Send them to me. Send them to me so I can put it in the clip. And when we do these little clips on social media, we'll get little baby Kaya in French.
I'll get back to you on that for sure.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, the thing with moving to America was that it was such a different system. You know, it's like you know, we're in a new school system now. I'm like, I have school like 5 days a week. I don't have recess anymore. We had like all these breaks in France, like, you know, kind of like how the Spanish have like siestas. We had a very similar situation, at least in my school. So it's kind of like being in this different country, different culture. I don't have my siesta. I don't have like my Wednesdays off where I can do my piano lessons and my sports. And so, I was like, we were trying to figure that out. And, also being immigrants, we didn't have all the money in the world to then like really afford to have like all these lessons. Granted, I don't know how my parents pulled it off in France, but so I remember it was at church. So I was just at this point just like practicing, like just by myself, because I
Mm.
really wanted to play these pieces that I had discovered. And, I was trying to finger through them, read the music. And I remember one of the first pieces that I fully played was Furilis, Beethoven, a little easier. And then I remember one day at church, I was kind of playing around on the piano, and then our organist was like, "Oh, well, you should play this at Sunday service." And I was like, okay. So I had like this big opportunity to perform in front of my church. It's like this Presbyterian church, like this really nice sanctuary. They had just gotten this donation to like
And
build.
where, sorry to interrupt, where in the US was this?
Oh, this was in Ithaca, New York.
Okay, great.
And this was my second year in the US. Our first year, we were actually outside Philadelphia. And there it was very much learning English.
Mm.
It was very much alone at home with my sisters, just trying to like make do with like this new life, which was really exciting at the time. But I get to Ithaca, go to this church, I have the opportunity to perform piano, and I play Furilis, and that really what did it for me. I mean, I was in fifth grade, and yeah, I mean, people loved it so much so that I got a scholarship to get piano lessons at this other
Wow.
music school that I would do like outside of school. And at the time I was kind of doing like baseball, like, I was kind of trying to do some sports and stuff and be in the flow of like the American life. So I was playing baseball, lasted a year. I was like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
So I just kind of quit sports and just focused on music. So, and yeah, so I was back at doing music lessons and had a really cool teacher. And yeah, so for me, like piano is one of those things that I've just kept along. And to circle back to those pieces, I did eventually have a chance to play them, which has been like a really exciting part of my career, or my journey as a musician. I eventually went to college to study piano performance and composition, which is another
Wow.
thing that I really got into. Because the thing with classical music and why I don't really play it anymore is that you're evaluated on such specific detail when you're performing. And for me, I kind of
Mm.
had an issue, especially growing up doing recitals, is that, you're going to spend all this time practicing a piece. Of course, you're going to play it perfectly when you're alone at home, nobody's listening. That's when you play it perfect. Now, when you have the recital and you're performing in front of a crowd, that's when you mess up. And it's kind of like
Yeah.
you're judged on that. And that I found really frustrating, just because I knew that I could play something, but then I kind of struggled with performing.
Hmm.
And especially in classical music, they were so strict about how it's like you're interpreting this composition by how what's
Sure.
written, the directions that you have on paper. And for me, my biggest fascination, even from like going to, Fantasy Impromptu and all these pieces that I wanted to play, was really not like, of course I wanted to play them, but I realized that I was more impressed about how a composer or somebody was able to compose that piece. It's like, what was in your head that you were able to like compose that? So also from early on, I love to like play around with chords and like just kind of like create my own melodies.
Hmm.
And I was always kind of like a creative type growing up too, just because, my parents didn't have a lot. I didn't have a lot of toys. I didn't have like all these video games I wanted. And oftentimes, I had to like leave it up to my imagination to create my own toys, to make my
Hmm.
own things. And so, with music, I was like, well, let me create my own tracks. And then that way I won't mess them up, and
Yeah.
people will be like, breathing down my neck, telling me how I suck when I know I don't.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot there. I mean, first of all, I think just, you've been given a gift and you've really like leaned into it, and not only did you just toy around with it, you went to study it and become classically trained. And I think like, while I don't focus specifically in the electronic world, the way we met and the music we produce, and we both DJ, I think it's so rare to see somebody like you with that skill set, and using it in their music, and like you use it in your social media. Like I know there's some videos that you've recorded where it's like you go to a music store and you're messing around on some keyboards, and these are getting hundreds and hundreds of likes and tons of engagement, and people are just so intrigued by it. And we'll talk about the social media stuff later, but I just think it's really impressive that you kind of went down that path. And um the how do you feel like that so when did you actually start, like, I guess, writing? You mentioned writing a few minutes ago.
Yeah, I would say I'm trying to remember when my first piano. I mean, it was definitely on piano, and
Yeah.
mainly when I was in the States. So like through
Yep.
like middle school, high school, probably when I was like in sixth, seventh grade, because then I got my hands on Finale, and Finale is basically the software where you can just like write sheet music, and then it also lets you like
Hmm.
play back what you play like on the MIDI notes. So I was like, "Ooh, this is fun. Let me just try to play around with like notes and stuff and see what comes up." And then I remember going to like Big Lots or something. It's like basically this big department store on the East Coast. I
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
if you haven't
Yeah.
seen one.
Oh, I know it. I'm an East Coaster.
You know. And I remember there was like this software because usually they had like these games you could get, but then they had like some software that was like $20 called Techno EJ, and that was like my first DAW I ever got. And this thing was so retro. It was like you couldn't even. It's like the interface was like very different. It wasn't like a Reason or Fruity Loops or anything like that. It's like they. It was very strict. But then that was actually just like electronic music, and they had like cool loops and stuff like that. So that was like my first time. That was probably
Mm.
seventh grade when I got it, and I started like dabbling in like
Yeah.
a bit
Because,
of, like production. But it was mainly like
yeah.
mostly like orchestral stuff or like piano stuff and things like that.
Yeah. Because as kids, we want to play, right? Like and
Yeah.
then so when there's opportunities to combine playing, but also, this new passion that you found in music, it allows us to really, I think, expand our creativity. By the way, quick pause. How's your Wi-Fi connection?
Wi-Fi is looking
I'm
good.
only asking. It's looking
Uh,
good. Okay, because what I'm seeing is a little blurry, but if it's good on your side, we're good.
okay.
Sorry to everybody listening. There's a little technical interruption here.
Well, so for you, you're coming up a little blurry. I don't know
Okay,
if
then
like
that's fine. Yeah, it
is that
records at lower quality, and then we can produce and publish it at a higher quality. So if I'm looking not too good, then I guess we're both same but different.
okay?
Um,
It might be me. I don't know, but I live,
nah, it's okay. We'll live with it. Well, thank you for sharing that. It's really really interesting. I mean, this isn't about me, but I can kind of share similar, I guess, upbringings, right? Like fourth grade, there was a presentation at our elementary school, and all these different instrumentalists came in and did a little, dog and pony show, and they would, mess around on their instruments. And the drummer who came in, he literally just had a snare drum, but he did this routine that was so intriguing to me, and I was like, I want to play drums, and that was it. And I started taking lessons in the fourth grade, but man, you talk about coming to America and the differences between us and Europe. It's such a shame to hear that you went from a lot of freedom and creative spaces and breaks in your education to actually explore other things outside the classroom to kind of being in it. It's a sad story with me in the drum lessons was I remember going to the basement of my elementary school and we were playing on desks. We were literally tapping using drumsticks, tapping on desks as part of our drum lesson. I don't know what was going on there, but anyways, okay, so we've kind of fast forwarded through elementary, middle school. We're still in like New York. College was where again?
So I went. The story with college is an interesting one.
Okay,
I
let's get into it.
went technically to three different universities until I found the right one. But in high school, so we eventually moved to Syracuse for like my last two
Mm,
years of high school, and there they had a program like a summer college at Syracuse University, and also they had this really cool opportunity that if you're like a straight A student for at least 3 years in the Syracuse school district, you could get like a full ride to Syracuse University.
mm,
However, I had only been there for 2 years, so I kind of like missed out on that boat. But through high school, and I was very much involved in like theater. I was like the lead of my musical theater show. I will send you some vids. I was like Elvis. I was like Black Elvis and All Shook Up. If you know the musical, shout out to you.
yeah.
And like did some like drama plays as well. But then I was also really involved. Like I played the sax. So in school, we did. And I mean, this even stemming back to like elementary school in America. In America, you have like music class or whatever. So one of the instruments that I picked up to be in concert band and everything with the sax. So through high school, I played alto saxophone. So I was like did like jazz band, concert band, all these fun activities, and then piano. I had my lessons outside of school. Um, but yeah, so through high school, I discovered Berkeley through this amazing YouTuber that I knew at this time on YouTube, who's goes by Charlie Puth, an amazing legend who's gone to do many great things. But he used to just have a YouTube channel, and I remember I used to like religiously watch his stuff. And he was like, "Yeah, I'm like at Berkeley," and I was like, "Yo, what is Berkeley?" And then I was looking into it, and I saw that it was like this really cool music school. And at the time, my uncle and his family had won from Cameroon, had won the green card lottery to move to America. So they had just moved to America. They were there for like a year, and then they moved outside of Boston. So I remember one year, it's his senior year, I went to visit. We saw them in Boston, and then I toured Berkeley, and I was like, "Yo, this is amazing. I really want to go here." Um, so then I did the whole interview thing. Went on campus. I remember the interviewer. This was even before Charlie Puth had really broken. I feel like he hadn't even done like his Ellen DeGeneres interview, which I think is really what put him out there. But I remember mentioning him at my interview at Berkeley, and I was like, "Yeah, like this is YouTuber I follow. He goes here, like Charlie Puth." Interviewer is like, "I don't know who that is." And I'm like, "All right, well, you should check him out." But and I remember I apply, and then when it comes to like the admissions and everything, I get a letter. I get in, and I was super excited because I got into my dream school. Literally, I couldn't be more thrilled. And I'm flipping through the acceptance letter, and we finally get to the costs and the financial aid. Didn't have any scholarship, unfortunately. And then I'm looking at the cost. It's like $250,000 to like go to the school, like legit, like from like.
And what year was this, by the way?
This was 2011.
Okay, so I was living in Boston. We may have crossed paths and we never even knew it.
Damn, look at that. I mean,
and by the way, Berkeley, I will just say, not just a really cool school, but like one of the most prestigious music schools in the world. Like anyone who goes to Berkeley is poised for success, and there's some of my favorite musicians have studied there, and so it's an honor to be even considered there. So keep going.
Yeah. So I was stoked, but the reality was that I couldn't afford to go, and I was pretty struck about it because then I was like, well, I was just every other school I was applying, I wasn't really like into. I mean, it was just like, okay, like I'm gonna go here or there, and then the school Hartwig had like the best scholarship for me, so I was like, okay, well, let me go there, and because I couldn't go to Syracuse because I had the cutoff of like I couldn't get all the monies to not pay a lot. Yeah. So I was trying to play the financial route. So I ended up going in the school in like upstate New York called Hartwick College. And it just wasn't the best school for me. It was smaller than my high school. I was there for a year, and ultimately I just really felt lost there. I was like, I don't see a future, let alone I don't see myself being there for 4 years. And so then I was kind of like looking out. I was like, okay, well, I have some credits. I was applying for schools, and then I was like, okay, let me go back home the summer after I finished the first year. And then I discovered, at the time, my sister was actually doing her master's in Canada, in Vancouver. And I was kind of aware that, Canada is an option. It's nearby. It's also like cheaper tuition. And then I'm like, oh, well, there's Montreal that's right there. And it's like French. And like, I'm kind of looking into the schools, and, I come across very quickly, there's McGill, there's University of Montreal, there's Concordia, there's all these schools. Obviously McGill is like the most prestigious, but by the time I was looking at it, it was like too late for fall admission. And, I was like, okay, well, let me take some courses at Syracuse University. So I was like part-time that following year for the first semester while I can apply for winter admission. And that kind of got McGill out of the question because they only accept fall. And then I went to visit Concordia, and I absolutely loved it. That was like my first time seeing the city. So that was like the fall of 2012. And I'm like, wow, I really want to go to the school. It's like in downtown Montreal. It's like flourishing. Yeah. So beautiful.
I absolutely love Montreal. I mean, I actually looked at McGill myself. I ended up going, well, I probably would have gone to McGill if not for some BS with like medical insurance and stuff and having to go across the border to Canada. But I ended up going to Vermont, University of Vermont, shout out Catamounts, and, an hour and a half from Montreal. So we had some great trips up to Montreal. I love it up there. So you ended up at Concordia. Yep. And then, kind of like, I guess, getting through your college experience, at what point, and you may have mentioned it earlier too, you mentioned something about electronic music, but obviously classically trained. So like when did like I guess your musical tastes and sounds and things like that, you know, when did electronic really become a big part of your life?
I mean, I really have to give it up to Montreal because I
Yeah.
was 19 when I moved there, and that was my, being in upstate New York for the majority of my youth in middle school and high school in America. Like, I didn't, we didn't have like all these clubs and everything. Maybe we had like one club or like a bar, but like our nightlife was. I mean, I was also in high school, so like, there's
Well,
not
then
much.
Montreal, you'd only need to be 18 to go out, right? Too. So
Yeah.
that's a
So
nice thing.
So I moved to this city. I'm living in an apartment with like these roommates from all over, from Germany, one from Australia. There's another one from Spain, two from Spain. And so I'm like, and they went to University of Montreal, but then like, it's a very like international city. It's bumping. There's like stuff going on every night. And I'm like, suddenly I can go out and I can have fun. Even in college at Hartwick, my first year, it was like, also a really small town in upstate New York. So we had like a little bar scene, and you had your fake IDs, or you went to like, to the frats, but we had like 3 frats, and it was a party, but like, it wasn't like anything
It's
crazy.
not near. Montreal is one of the best cities in the world, in my opinion, and it
Yeah.
offers so much. And there's clubs and there's nightlife, and so it sounds like you got exposed to dance music, electronic music through just going out. Do you remember any of the like clubs you went to, or
Yeah.
any of the places that really
Absolutely.
did it?
Yeah. So there was Musique. Musique was
Mm.
awesome because it was like 2 clubs. It was like one side was electronic, the other side was like hip hop, and definitely had a lot of nights I don't remember. Let's put it this way. And then there was like Velvet, like this really cool dungeon club in the Old Port where it's like the
Mm.
speakeasy, but you go down like this. Also, it was like Montreal. I loved just the experience of going out. It was not even about getting into the club, but it was about like getting ready, going out, like waiting in line, and like just walking through, like hearing the music bumping, and you're just excited to go out. I was only 19, and like it was just so fun.
And
Minus
you're
the cold
bundled
weather.
up in your
Yeah,
Canada Goose,
exactly.
yeah, yeah,
And
minus the weather.
it was such a fun time, and I was, we definitely had a good run with my classmates, and even Concordia. I remember like for the business, because I was first in business school. I was doing like finance and some music classes because that was like the
Mm.
easiest way to get in. um and then I eventually switched to like music full time there. But yeah, it was, yeah, honestly, Montreal really did it for me in terms of like
Hell
this,
yeah.
like house music and all that good
Yeah,
stuff.
there's always a breaking point. I mean, for me, like I was into so many different types of music growing up. My story is that like, like a lot of people, influenced by parents' musical taste. So I was influenced by my dad's, vinyl collection, which was a lot of classic rock, blues, jazz. I was in a symphonic band in growing up, jazz band. I was in an angsty teen rock band with my friends. We were covering like Rage Against the Machine and Deftones, and I was like this alternative rock guy. But then I started finding like jazz fusion and hip hop and jam bands. And I was a big Dave Matthews fan at one point. I went to summer camp and we'd like sit around boom boxes listening to CDs. And I remember like Sublime and, all these different bands that we grew up with. But what really, I think, changed course for me, I dabbled in some electronic. I like the Matrix soundtrack and stuff like that. But going to
Mhm.
Australia for me was kind of my gateway, right? Like they listen to so much. I don't know if you've been, but like it was just like the two things I listened to down there were electronic and like indie rock. And I
Mm.
remember going out and like, even though she's kind of like, I don't know, she's a pop star, but Lady Gaga was all over the clubs there, and it has a dance beat, and so that was kind of my exposure. I remember I was listening to Trance Around the World by Above and Beyond, their podcast, to like study for exams and stuff. And anyways, I come back my senior year of college and my friends are like, "What happened to you down there? You've changed." um, but okay, yeah. So I mean, it's evident that music's always been a focus, a primary focus of your life, from the educational part to learning how to play to just being inspired by some of the pioneers of classical music. And then you even studied it in college. So let's fast forward a little bit, because as long as I've known you, you've worked in music, right, professionally, both as a creative and on the business side of things. So what's next? You graduate college. Where does Kaya's life take him from there?
Right. So in college, I was always trying to gain experience outside the classroom. That was my whole thing. Because
Mm.
I was kind of like, I remember before my first day actually as a freshman, I remember going on YouTube and watching this documentary called College is a Scam. And that really scarred me because I was like, wait, should I even be going to college? What is this? Like, like showing people that went to Ivy Leagues and are still homeless, And so for me, it was always like, and obviously I didn't take that too much to heart because I know college is important. But I was always like, okay, how do I get experience outside the classroom, whether it be with internships, getting jobs that can really help me. And, at the time I was into piano, I was getting really into film scoring. So I knew I had like this kind of like starting to have this club life from being in Montreal, but like daytime, I was like doing my piano, classical, like trying to be a film composer, really listening to like Hans Zimmer, John Williams, all of that. And so I was really looking for opportunities to just do more like film scoring. So like on like just what are the film students doing, or I would just go endlessly on Craigslist, which has been actually oddly enough like I've had so many opportunities on Craigslist. It's insane. I don't really condone it anymore. I think.
What were the opportunities? People were looking for people to compose music for them on
Yeah,
Craigslist?
for music gigs, for work, for roommates and finding apartments, all that. But I was kind of like, I would go on like the gig section and be like composer. And so long story short, my junior year of college, I came across an opportunity, and this guy was like, hey, I'm looking for like just like a music assistant. I'm like this composer, I'm working on this film. And so I email him through Craigslist. And then I basically, hold on, I'm trying to put do not disturb here for notifications. Sorry about that.
Okay.
And so I eventually go to his studio, and then he's telling me about this film that he's working on. It's like this Christmas movie. And very quickly I go on the piano and like I start playing around, and like just from that meeting, that was like one of the main themes of the movie. And he was like, well, actually I would love you to write with me. Like if you want, like we can do this. That was like a summer job. So I remember going there every day. It was like a 40-minute bus ride from downtown Montreal. So I was like just listening to John Williams. I was like, finally my dreams are coming true. Listening to like specifically E.T., great score. Like Harry Potter, but there was like this other one. It was E.T. and there was like this other one from John Williams that I really like.
Star Wars?
No, the other one.
The other one.
The other one, like the million other movies. The adventure one. What's that one adventure movie that he did?
Oh, The Goonies? Not The Goonies. Did he do The Goonies?
Like Adventures. I can't believe I
want me to Google? I will Google. Anyways, wait, and so sorry, had you graduated, or this was like a summer job kind of thing?
It was like a summer job. I had like a year or two left in school. But so I was like, okay, great. I'm like working on movies. Finally, some things are happening. And then I read about ASCAP. I create Music Expo. So ASCAP is a PRO, and every year they have this this conference in LA.
Wait, can I pause? Was it Jurassic Park?
Jurassic Park, yes, and there was another
Bingo.
one.
Nailed it.
Jurassic Park was a great one. Yeah, E.T., Jurassic Park. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. John Williams has so many good scores. Also,
Massive.
Back to the Future, not John Williams, but like really good score. So, anyways, I'm like, Hans Zimmer is great too, obviously. But I just loved like the orchestral, because like Hans Zimmer kind of changed the game in terms of like blending electronic with the orchestral to the score, which is like now that's like the sound. But back then,
his 60 Minutes interview, if you haven't seen it, is really impressive. And anyone listening, go check that out. All right, keep going. I'll stop interrupting you.
No, you're good. So at the time, my sister, who went to Syracuse University, she was also doing like communications, television, radio, and film. And so when she became like a junior or something, she had like a semester abroad in LA. And we ended up driving her across the country with a car, me and my mom. That was my first time driving across the country.
Nice.
And then going to LA. And this was like my sophomore year or something like that. But basically, I loved LA. Like, it's like I grew up to a lot of like the LA culture, that being like MTV, just like the music industry is kind of around like Los Angeles, So for me, I thought that was the coolest thing. And going there, seeing people drive, 90 miles per hour on the highway, just like the weather, I was like, yo, this place is wild. It's like I've only heard
90 miles an hour. I hate West Coast drive. They're going like 60 at all times, and they won't move over from the left lane. But I'll keep my pet peeves to myself.
Yeah, it was wild. And so that same year, they were doing the ASCAP I Create Music Expo. And
Uh-huh.
so I had just scored for the film. So I had all these little snippets of like me scoring for this movie that I submitted. And so long story short, I got into this panel where they can judge like your music and criticize it and kind of give feedback, like a feedback panel. So I was like, this is awesome. So
Mm.
this is kind of like my reason now to go to this conference. So I go, and then at the same time, Montreal, one of my classmates had like one of her family members, because everybody knew I was in music and wanted to do more film scoring and stuff. She was like, "Oh, well, my uncle is like this composer at Remote Control Productions, and like you guys should meet up for. You guys should just grab a coffee." And so I'm looking up this guy, um, and like he's worked on like Nip Tuck, American Horror Story, like all these
Mm.
crazy like shows, and I'm like, "Yo, this is awesome!" I'm so excited. She introduces me. I like respond back. I don't hear anything from him, and I'm like, "Okay." A week, two goes by, 3 weeks. I'm like following up, nothing. It took me like 4 months of following up on email for him to finally respond back and be like, "Hey, I'm so sorry. Yes, let me know when you're in LA. Would love to grab a coffee." And I was like, "Well, I'm going to be in LA for this conference, so like let's plan something." And so ultimately we have the meeting. So I'm like driving to Remote Control Productions in Santa Monica, which also happens to be Hans Zimmer's studio. So like this is kind of like knocking two birds in one stone. It's like not only am I meeting this really cool composer, but he works at like Hans Zimmer studio. And I
Mm.
remember going there for the first time and like going in the hallways and you see like Dark Knight, Inception, like Interstellar, like all these like Pirates of the Caribbean, and I'm like, yo, this is so cool. Finally go in the studio, we talk, and it was just so awesome. And like we had like a 40-minute long conversation, and at the end he's just like, by the way, we do like this internship program. Like, are you interested? Like, I could like submit you. Like, I'll be happy to. And I'm like, yes, say less. Are you kidding me? So yeah, I'll be for the summer. I'll connect you with our operations manager, and that was Chris Strong, bless his heart. And so I get connected with Chris, and then the whole thing was like, well, we'll put you on for next year, like which was like the year I graduated college, and so I had an opportunity to make it to LA. And at the time, I was like trying to apply for other internships. I wasn't hearing anything back. It was really hard to find work in the U.S. because with my Canadian like degree, it was kind of hard to like link
Mm.
it back. Even like on applications, you have a drop down of like where you went to college, and like half the times my university would not even show up. Um, so yeah, that was ultimately really my connection to LA, just meeting this guy who got me this internship. And
And,
so that
and was the internship with Hans Zimmer, or how? What's
it
the where does
was.
Hans Zimmer come into the?
Yeah, so the internship was just like a general studio internship for
Got
Hans's
it.
studio.
Okay, for
Um,
Hans' studio. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then it was like, okay, well, I guess I'm moving to LA. So I have 1 year left of school. And I also need to like make money because how the hell am I going to afford to move to LA? I have
Yep.
to, it was also an unpaid internship. So for this
Great.
whole year, I really like, I had 1 year to figure it out. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to get as many odd jobs, like just work as much as I can to make it happen. So I was like a brand ambassador. I did so many odd jobs to raise money. I had this target of like, I need to make like 15 grand this year to be able to like have enough savings to like be able to move to LA for 3 months and then take it from there. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of like how I moved to LA.
That is there's a lot there. I mean, first of all, great story. Thank you for sharing that. I think I sort of mentioned in the beginning, like you've coming into the middle of your life and your career, like I just remember going out with you multiple different times and you just know everybody. Like that is, I think, a superpower of yours is just like your ability to connect with people and to network and to, I mean, 4 months of following up, like people would give up after 4 days, like that patient persistence is something that's really important. And I think is in life, but also especially in our industry and music industry, where it's like it's a little more challenging to get people to respond to you,
Yeah.
or to book you, or to collaborate with you or whatever. And so that patient persistence, like in a very professional, respectful way, is really important. So you figure that out at an early age. You made connections, you found opportunities, you pursued opportunities, and then you made things work because you were so dedicated to that. And like I said, the connections that you have and continue to make, and I think have really helped to boost your career. I think like what I preach with artists that I work with is just really the importance of network. It's important in every aspect of life, but especially in music. And so to be face in place, shaking hands with people, getting connections and introductions, and then doing it online as well goes so far, you know? So, I mean, anything to add around just the idea and the concept of like networking and,
Sure.
people connecting each other to like get you where you want to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's also sort of like the curiosity. I'm just such a curious person. It's like I will flip every stone, you know? It's like, and with
Yeah.
people too, I mean, I think that like there's so many great people out there, and I think I really got that from Montreal, just being exposed to like just really phenomenal people from like all over the world. And I just love a good personality, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, it's especially having the opportunity to move to LA. I feel like that was such like a high light in my life, because
Mm-hmm.
LA is like the land of like the rich and famous, and it's like I'm here. It's like there's like I'm gonna flip every stone in this town, you know. And it's kind of like starting with like Hansa's studio and like meeting the people there, all the interns there as well. And also I didn't have like that much like, so I've you know spent my whole life studying music and going to music
Right.
school, doing all of that. But one of the major pillars that my education failed me on was just like how to actually be successful in the music industry. And like a lot of schools
Yeah.
don't teach about those values, you know. And it's kind of like you're thrown out, you know, you have a degree, great, you know how to play a piece, you know, you can sight read, you can do all that stuff, but like how do you actually make money, you know what I mean? And like the whole thing I realized was like they're just trying to lure you then to do, you know, further education. Okay, well, no, you need your master's, you need a PhD, and like you need to get further in debt, and then to do what then after, you know, then you become a professor, you know what I mean? It's like how do you
Yeah.
actually work in the music industry? And
Okay.
so
So give us a masterclass. How do you make money in the music industry?
that's a question I'm still trying to figure out, but no, but you know, I think for me, moving to LA and having so many different opportunities at, you know, my reach, you know, I was doing this internship, and granted, it was amazing working with Hans's team. And, you know, as an intern, I had the perks of like, hey, making his coffee. So I had a lot of like face to face time with him and a lot of other legendary composers there. I eventually
Yeah.
got hired as like receptionist. I remember once I plated his dinner and he was just like, oh, just join us for dinner. It was literally me, him, and one of his writers. Like, I was like, I should have been prepared for this. I was like trying not to fangirl
You
too much.
played, hold on. You played piano at
Yeah.
Hans Zimmer's dinner. Like
No,
you
no,
were the music. No?
sorry, no, I played at his dinner as like a receptionist runner. So like, you know, I would grab his dinner. Also,
Oh, okay. Well, that would have been cool too. Again.
that would have been crazy. And I really should have just, because he had a really nice grand piano in his studio. I should have just been like, Hans, I'm gonna let you finish, but you gotta hear me play the piano.
Tickle those ivories, baby.
Right? I would have been featured in one of his movies by now. But like, yeah, we had like really good conversations. Like, we bonded on the fact that we're both like immigrants in this country, and you know, like, and even for him, a lot of opportunity here, and that's why he's here. But you know, ultimately, there was also so much more to discover in LA. So after 9 months there, it wasn't really paying the bills, and I was like, you know, I gotta like sustain, I gotta pay rent and everything, and so I was looking online for different jobs. Entertainmentcareers.net is a great resource for trying to look for music jobs. And came across this manager who's actually, his office was just down the street, like maybe a couple blocks away, a couple streets away from Honda Studio. And I go there for the interview. Turns out it's like Ice Cube's manager. And I'm like, this is sick. I get the job that night after I interviewed. And so I was like, pieces, remote control. I'm gonna go work with Ice Cube, and just you know. So I was there. It lasted 3 months though, because let me tell you, I really got like the experience of working with like a tough boss. You know,
I'm
there's a
sure.
lot. You know that it was. We all
Was the end of the 3 months voluntary, or did they kind of escort you
no,
out?
we got straight up fired. Like
You
they
got
gave.
fired.
Guess how much my severance was?
$0.
It was $1. I remember the manager who fired me. She was like, "Hey, thank you for the time. By the way, here's a dollar in cash. Here's your severance." I was like, "Wow."
Wow. What was the reason Ice Cube's team gave you for firing you?
Well, it had nothing to do with music. Just and I guess I'm maybe outside of my NDA because this was like a long time ago. But basically, he who must not be named ran a red light. Not Ice Cube, his manager. Ran a
Okay.
red light, and as his assistants, we were supposed to somehow magically be his lawyers and be his, like, I
Mm,
was supposed to be Jeff. walking into the courtroom and like trying to like fend off his speeding ticket, which did not work. I basically showed up to the arraignment, and like the judge is literally just laughing at me because he's like, I know him very well, in fact, and he should know better than to have his assistant show up instead of him to his arraignment, you know? And like I had never done an arraignment
And
before.
you're like what, 22, 23 years old at this point?
I was 23.
Yeah.
So it's like at the Santa Monica courthouse, you know, I'm like, oh shit, this is like pretty bad and really embarrassing. But yeah,
You lost. So he lost the case. He had to pay the ticket or whatever, and then they
yeah,
got rid of you because of that.
yeah.
Oh
So
my
yeah,
god.
it was. We all got fired that day, all his assistants. But you know, his entire company got fired. By the way, like it was just he was like, you know, you know, it is what it is. I don't want him coming after me. But that was a gift and a curse because, you know, that working with Ice Cube's and like team, and obviously like his, like I remember one day like Ari Emanuel just randomly called, so I'm like on the phone with Ari Emanuel, who is the CEO of WME, you know, and like I was also talking a lot with like the marketing team at WME, the tour marketing team, because he was going on tour, especially with his Big Three League. So, anyways, I go to this talent agency, no, the staffing agency, and you know, I tell them that I worked for Jeff. The guy already is like, I am so sorry about that. Like, how was that experience? You can talk to me, because he was just kind of notorious to be like just going through assistants like every 2 weeks or so and stuff like that. It was kind of crazy. But you know, I built some thick skin through it, so I don't regret that experience. Ice Cube was very chill, by the way, very good guy. But so
I would hope so. It's in his name, Ice Cube.
but yeah,
Okay, so then that you mentioned WME, and that was that an opportunity that presented
that
itself?
was, yeah. So after I was looking for a job, was again back on Craigslist trying to find like odd jobs to sustain myself. Then I finally get an interview with a staffing agency. They send my resume to the mailroom at WME. I have an interview there, and like I can name drop. I'm like, oh yeah, I know Michelle Bernstein. I know him and her. Like, so like it was just kind of like I was like in a good space, and I got the job. So a month later, after I get fired, I'm now in the mailroom at WME, and this is truly where my life completely changed
Yeah,
forever.
and just real quick for those listening who don't know what WME is, it's William Morris Agency. It's one of the biggest entertainment agencies in the world, right?
Absolutely. I mean, some of the biggest clients, and I was on the music side, and on the music
Mm-hmm.
side, I mean, some of their clients included Drake, you know, Kendrick Lamar, Bruno Mars, Dua Lipa, Dead Mouse, Skrillex at some point,
Big
or you
names, big
know, just
names.
like
Yeah.
just big names in all
Mm-hmm.
genres, pop,
Yeah.
electronic, and like country and
And they do
everything.
sports and fashion too, but you were on the music side, which is amazing. Were you delivering mail? Is that what you're doing it to
So
start?
our mailroom was a little different on the music side. We were kind of like the cool kids, so we didn't really have a mailroom, even though it was called Music
Okay.
Central. But
Okay.
basically, our mailroom was like going up to promoters. So we had like grids. So like they split us up. You know, we were like maybe 20 or so in the mailroom or in Music Central, and then we would have a computer. And then our task is like on this computer, we have like 20 promoters or so, and we're just basically doing ticket counts. So we reach out and we're like, hey, what is the updated ticket count for this show? And then we send out emails. Like we just had templates that we sent out in the morning. And then if we
Mm-hmm.
didn't hear back by lunchtime, then we would like call them in the afternoon. So it was kind of like this thing every day. And like every like on Mondays, we were reaching out to like pop shows. On Tuesdays, it would be like electronic shows or whatever, you know. So that was cool. I did that for like months, you know. It's like, and through that, then you know, you had training, so you learn how to use the WME software, the booking software. You know, getting to know all the agents. Sometimes we did like you floated. So like, let's say an assistant was sick or something, and they needed a cover because the agent needs to be rolling calls and needs an assistant. And sometimes they would call us up to like float, and we were literally like in this dungeon downstairs doing ticket counts. And then we kind of just, it was just kind of like a waiting room too, because once like a desk opened up, so when an agent's desk opened up, then, you know, they would like, our HR would come down and be like, hey, so this desk just opened up. Who wants to apply for it? Then we would literally all look at each other like, and like, you would be like, look around. These are not your friends. These are your competitors. It was kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of like a little toxic, but
It's
it's
like
okay.
Survivor, but
Yeah.
music industry. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. So So you got an inside look at the true the true underbelly, if you will, of like the music industry and all the inner workings and what goes into stuff. People that the majority, probably 99% of people in the world, don't have any idea what goes into that, and they just go to the
Yeah.
concerts or stream the music or whatever. So how did that really flip? How did that I guess you said it turned your life upside down, to use
Yeah.
Will Smith. Right? Like, what was, I guess, was there any single moment or any single component of this job that really changed things for you, or was it kind of a sum of parts?
I think it was a combination of it, and my favorite was just the access to just to going out, because
Mm.
going to shows is expensive. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, it's gotten even more expensive now, but like when a show is
Oh
like
yeah.
$50,
Yep.
it's like I can't go out like on a weekly basis. I just go back then. Life was just like meeting up with friends, doing a little like pregame, maybe going to the bars, saving up for a big show. Like if when John Williams played at the Bowl, I remember one of my first years in LA, like I
Mm.
saved up to go to that, and it was great. But I wasn't really going like clubbing and like stuff, or like buying tickets to shows. But then what really
Sure.
did it for me at WME was that now we had access to all these shows that we could just get free tickets essentially to go with a plus one or whatever. And as you grew in the company, you had more freedom and more access to things, to the point where at Coachella I was like literally giving out VIP passes for free to my friends, not selling them.
Yeah. Yeah.
DJ about networking and getting my people in. But
Right.
so that was really like just finally being able to go out to like some really cool shows. I mean, I've seen some really amazing concerts and artists and venues, going to the Hollywood Palladium, the Wiltern, going
Sure.
to the Fonda, doing all these things. And so yeah, and then I was still in the mailroom for like 6 months, and then Hans Zimmer's agent was also at WME. So Hans Zimmer was actually a client of WME, which was also like kind of
Mm.
like a cool bargaining card for me to get the job. But
Yeah.
then so was Ice Cube, also a WME
Mm-hmm.
client. And so I remember, because like in the mailroom they had us recite our bios in front of everyone, so we had to like stand up and give like a 1 minute spiel, and essentially that was kind of like what you were supposed to do when you were interviewing for an agent, because they only had like, it was only like a 5 minute long interview. And so I remember always talking about my Hans Zimmer experience, and everybody thought I was going to get the job like assisting Amos Newman, who was his agent, and he was like one of the first desks that I interviewed for, and that opened up like a month of me being at the company. And everybody, I moved on to like the second round of interviews, and everybody was like, "Oh yeah, you got this. It makes sense." Like Hans Zimmer, I thought I had it, and then I didn't get the job. And I was pretty devastated, because I thought, it made sense. I was like, yes, I can close the loop working for Amos, and then I'll be like with Hans's team again. And I remember even at an interview, they were asking me, what kind of music are you interested in? And I always said, music for visual media, so like film
Mm.
scoring, electronic, because I knew from Montreal that I loved just like a good DJ set. I love electronic music. I was
Oh
making
yeah.
playlists on Spotify. And so, months went down. I interviewed for a few other like desks, because I just wanted to become an assistant. But
Sure.
then it was on February 14th, 2017, Valentine's Day. We announced that like, Pete Tong is looking for an assistant, because his assistant was transferring departments. She wanted to go into like the commercials department,
Yep.
Charlotte. And so I raised my hand. I'm like, Pete Tong, let's go. To be honest, I wasn't
What?
like fully. Go ahead.
I was gonna ask, is Pete Tong, and for those who don't know, Pete Tong, veteran in the game musically, longtime DJ, BBC Radio 1 host, The Essential Mix, if anyone knows what that is. Was he living in LA? I was curious about that, because he's British, right? So
Yeah, yeah. At the time, he was in LA for sure.
cool.
Because I mean, his whole thing was trying to expand, like the electronic music scene in America. I mean, first with
Got it.
Miami, with the start
Yep.
of like Miami Music Week and his pool parties there, to then kind of bring it over to like the West Coast. And he had also founded the electronic music division
Mm-hmm.
at WME with Joel
Oh,
Zimmerman.
okay.
And
Very cool.
so he's like the founder partner, like, and just kind of helps consult of bringing clients over to the agency.
Cool.
So he's not actually an agent. So that was kind of like a cool desk for me, because it was like more of like a creative desk as well. And I wasn't going to do like a lot of offers, which is what most agents do. They do offers for their clients, to give them
Right.
employment so they can perform around the world, and get money and survive. But
Yeah. So okay, cool. So you found, sorry to speed it up, but I do want to get to the current day stuff too. But
no,
so
right?
hard to believe we've already been talking for almost an hour. So
Crazy.
okay, you find yourself into basically working for Pete Tong, right? That's
Yeah.
the kind of long and short of it. What would you say were a couple of the like really valuable pieces of your experience with him, or so it could be anything from like tips and tricks you picked up working with him, or connections you made from working with him. Like, what were some of the really key pieces to sort of continue, building on your career?
Well, I think first of all, it was just so much through like osmosis because the first time I had really seen Pete in action was actually at the Hollywood Bowl before I was even
Mm.
working for him. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember he was doing like his Ibiza Classics at the Bowl, and they were giving out all these tickets, and I had like 10 tickets, so I invited like 10 friends to go to the Bowl with me, and like I was like,
So he's doing
yeah.
like a DJ set, right? DJ
I
set there. Yeah.
said, like with like a
Yeah.
60-piece orchestra,
Oh,
and I was
okay.
like, "Wow, this guy's like a legend!" Like it was so cool. He's playing at the Hollywood Bowl. I mean, that's one of the most iconic venues in LA.
Oh
And
yeah.
then on the flip side, I'm at the office, and he's just chilling, just walking down the hall, going to his office. I'm like, "Who is this character?" And then and this was like a few months before I had the before I started working with him. So like when
Mm-hmm.
I finally got the job working for him, it was just so cool just to see actually the man behind this whole. It was kind of like the first, because I had worked with Hans, and like I was kind of like familiar with like having kind of like this celebrity boss, but
Sure.
with Pete it was like one-on-one. I was like his assistant directly, like just dealt with him. So that was like just really cool. It was such an honor. And I also saw like how quickly also the attitude from me just being in the mailroom and agents kind of like talking you down to them being Pete Tong's assistant, and suddenly it's like, oh shit, because they're all
Uh,
like looking up to Pete. They're like,
Status. What
they're like
was it?
to me.
What Yeah, what was it like working with Pete? I mean, how was he as a human, as a person? Did it feel like more of a boss relationship, or was he kind of mentoring you in any way? Like, what was that like?
I mean, it was definitely like a great relationship. It was I mean, at the time I didn't know I was going to be a DJ, and like my interest was more on like the management side of things, the music side of things, the live events side of things.
Mm,
And so I just loved like just seeing that he's such a down to earth person, also very much a family. Like he's a dad, he has like 6 kids, and like just so
wow.
caring and like very patient with everything. Also, he was touring a lot, so like I didn't have that much face to face with him just because he was gone like half the time. So for me that kind of left me this position where I also had to be kind of like my own boss, where when he's
Sure.
traveling and touring, then it's like what he really wanted me to do was to like make connections outside. It's like, how can I bring people to him, to the agency? And I obviously just wanted to make him proud. So it was
Mm.
like, I remember when he was like, oh yeah, I want to sign Peggy Goo. Like that was actually my first, when he gave me my work laptop, that was like my password. He was like, I want Peggy Goo. She eventually got signed at WB. But I
Hell
remember
yeah.
like that year at Coachella, she played. And so I
Hmm.
just went up to her, and we talked for 20 minutes. I was like, hey, I'm Pete's assistant. Like we talked for like 20 minutes. It was amazing. Same thing with this other artist. So I was always kind of like, and I was always taking pictures. So like I would just
Yeah.
like bomb him pictures of like, it's like, hey, I'm here with Peggy Goo here. I'm here with such and like other person. And like he was always like thumbsing up,
Yeah.
So
That name will get you in the door for sure. That name will get you FaceTime. Absolutely. So
right?
that's pretty incredible. I mean, you were gifted almost a lot of responsibility when he wasn't around. He trusted you, it sounds like, to just
Mhm.
go out and get shit done and make connections. And
Yeah,
again,
absolutely.
leaning into your gift for building relationships and networking. It sounds like that was a perfect fit. So that's great.
Yeah. So all did that, and that lasted about a year and a half. So great experience. I mean, with Pete, we went to like, he brought me to Miami the first time to Miami Music Week, where I saw him at like his iconic pool party, all
Hmm.
gone Pete Tong.
Oh yeah.
Um, and he played Coachella as well. So it's just like I have like this cool ass boss that I'm just following around. I'm sure I'm like grabbing him coffee. I'm scheduling his life, but at the same time, like I just can see like that he's such a cool dude, and I'm like, damn, like I like I kind of was like, this is because also I'm still an artist. I was kind of
Right.
doing this business, this office job to also pay for the bills to be in LA. But ultimately,
Right.
like I'm trying to figure out how am I going to bring my music, my film scoring, my piano, my composition into the light, and at that
Yeah.
time I was so busy with WME that was kind of like a bit on a back burner.
Sure.
But then second year at WME, I go on LinkedIn and I get this message from Netflix that basically wants to hire me to like be a music assistant there, a creative music assistant. So long story short, again, I was like, I saw how much they would pay, and I was like, okay, well, I have been there for 2 years. Love you, Pete. Love you, WME, but I'm gonna take this new opportunity at Netflix. So I ended up
Yeah.
quitting, which was like, it was kind of sad, but also like, it kind of got financially difficult with WME again because it's like low pay, a lot of
Yeah.
hours, and like I just wanted to find out more about the industry because I'm here like just I was like 26 at the point. Had just turned 26
Right.
when I started working at Netflix, and so I'm like, okay, well, let me do that. Let me figure it out. Netflix lasted 6 months. Again, was one of those jobs where I totally sank, and this was like right before COVID happened.
Yeah.
So I get let go from Netflix. I'm now jobless. I'm cooped up at home. It's the pandemic. We all are. We're trying to figure out what the meaning of life is. I was like trying to get back into the music industry. At that point, I was like actually applying to be a label assistant at Mousetrap. Somehow I had met Dean Wilson along the way, and I was like emailing his people, and we had gotten like a conversation. I was supposed to interview with them, but that was like during COVID, so everything got pushed up, and like it never really happened. And so I kind of had this moment where I really had to internalize, and I really thank COVID for that too, because I think we all had a moment to like think about, what should we do? Like what are we doing
What's
here?
important? Yeah, what's
What's
important
important?
to us and career and all that. So, I do want to kind of move things along here. We have a lot to get to. So you basically you kind of had this epiphany. It sounds like that you wanted to
Yeah.
get into DJing. You had
Well,
this
I
love.
knew that like I always made like playlists on Spotify, and so during COVID, we would eventually start partying again with friends and
Yep.
stuff like that,
Yep.
and like I then would sometimes be the aux DJ on my Spotify, and my friends were like, "Yo, why don't you just learn how to DJ and you can do a proper set?" Because at the time we were throwing like beach parties where we eventually met. But with these
Yeah.
parties, they obviously had the decks, and like sometimes we would go sailing and whatever, and I would be like on the sound box, like just on my
Yeah.
phone,
Yeah.
and they're like, just learn how to DJ. And I was like, you know what? Throughout my time in LA, the most memorable experience I had was working with Pete, hands down.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
feel like dance music too was the most welcoming, because you know how it is. It can be very
Yeah.
standoffish, the way you look or like the way you come from. If you're not connected, if you didn't go to Berkeley or whatever, it's like it can be really hard to get into a certain niche. And
Sure.
so I found that like dance music was like kind of like that industry was the one where I felt the most welcome and the most like that's where I flourished, working with Pete. So I was like, you know what, I really like it. I love the music. And so I got some decks, and the rest is history.
Yeah. No,
Got some decks,
seriously. I mean,
that's it.
yeah, I mean, the how I got into DJing was very similar, right? Like I realized I had this gift for like curation, and I remember whether it was putting playlists together, my senior year of college, or I remember this one night sitting in somebody's backyard in Vermont. It was like summertime. We just graduated college. There was like this cuddle puddle happening, and every time I was controlling the music, and every time I would put on a song, they would be like, "Oh my god, it's perfect," like that kind of thing. And so the old guitarist of my band, that angsty teen rock band, we reconnected after college. He had gotten into dance and electronic, producing, DJing, and I spent time with him. He took me under his wing. I learned how to DJ, and he had me become his opener for this residency he had in Boston. And same thing, rest is history. So let's get into like the Kaya Music Project. I want to really talk about that because, like I said, we went from I would say effectively you've been a DJ producer in electronic for maybe 4 years. Is that fair to say, ish, give or take? Right. So
Yeah.
like when we met, you had just been getting into it, but like when we go back to the intro and all the people you've shared the stage with and the people you've released music with and where you've released music, all that stuff, like it's all happened at what I believe is a really relatively quick pace. People spend their whole lives working on this stuff and may not have had the kind of success that you've seen. So like what do you I guess what would you say you owe your kind of your quick success to, as far as the gig opportunities, the releases you've had, even, you know, something like getting on, if people out there know who Phantoms are, you know, getting on the record label, like, what would you say you all owe all of this, you know, quick rise to?
Um, I mean, definitely just from the network that I grew in LA, but
Yeah.
also I want to give a bit of like my definition of network, because I think like when people say think networking, a lot of people think it's like getting an opportunity. It's like, oh, I got to network to get a job, you know, or like I got to do
Mm,
to get something from somebody. But for me, like in LA, like I learned pretty quick that like, you know, I had to give. So, like my networking was like to give actually. Like I would give like, and for me, I had the opportunity to have like all these concert tickets from
right.
WME. So
Right.
like that was kind of like my way to network. It's like, yo, let's go out, let's build, and like let's really just become a family. It's like if for me, networking is like making like you know becoming friends with people in your industry, and you know it's not always about like just looking like getting a job out of somebody. It's just like about being homies and hanging out and like
Absolutely.
doing that. And I think that kind of grew to a point where then people know who I am and they fuck with me. And then, you know, it's like if there's an opportunity, they're gonna let me know about it. So like
Yeah.
with DJing, that's kind of like how it was, where like even around the crew that I was hanging out with, which was like very much in like the music space, we would start doing like these parties, and there I met like some promoters who were also at the parties. And like the way we first met was just obviously I was DJing, so they saw me in action, but then
Yeah.
we were just chilling. You know, at the end of the day, we were
Yeah.
just having a good time. It was not just like, hey, you're a promoter. Can I like play a gig at your spot? You know, it was just like, you know,
Yeah.
let's just vibe out, you know, and be friends. And so I think that's really what I owe it up. Is just like be like just being a friend and being there for people.
Yeah. And I think that's such a valuable piece, right? It's like just being a good human, right? Like
Yeah.
being personable, being likable, give more than you take, you know, and just like, you know, it, I remember this scene, I think it's from Ocean's 11, where it's like just like be memorable, like say
Yeah.
something so people around, because it's like, you know, this industry, everybody's trying to get somewhere. LA, everyone's trying to get somewhere, trying to do something. But like if you go in it with the intent of just like making human connection, and you know, making establishing lifelong relationships where you can also look to help other people and not just be helped by them, is so damn important, right? So
Mhm.
I think that's a big one. You know, as far as like the Kaya Music project, you know, I want to get into that a little bit. You know, when I work with artists, my main three pillars are three things, right? So I help them focus on brand. I help them focus on product, whatever that is, whatever your offer is. It could be your music, your performance, your merch, whatever that is, and then really good marketing and sales strategy, right? So if you had to break down those three pillars as it relates to Kaya, right?
Mhm.
Like how would you describe your brand? Like what makes you unique as far as like your craft, your sound, your art, things like that. Talk to us about like your product itself, you know, your music, what your process is, and then how you think about marketing and promotion strategy, because that's even something that's changed and I've noticed a big difference in, right? Like you and I
Mhm.
played together one of my parties, Pizza and Techno, a couple years ago. I remember like sitting on the couch, we came up with this fun skit that we did. I remember like that at the time felt like a little bit like, ugh, we got to do this thing. But like I've seen your social media and all that, and I've noticed you really embracing it and being really authentic with it, like I mentioned in the beginning. So just, you know, kind of quickly break down those three pillars and how you think about those things.
Yeah, I mean that's like one of the that's a really good question, because I think it's so important as an artist to like be aware, have like brand awareness, and kind of knowing what you're also like what your product is. Because like
Right.
most companies, you have a product and you know you package it nice and it's like tangible, but like for an
Mm-hmm.
artist, it's like me, right? So it's like what do I bring to the table? And I think a lot of it is just like a lot of people now like locally now it's like the whole quest of being known like outside of like the local
Yeah.
um, spot, but like locally, it was like I think just people again like vibing out. Like I like to party, I like to have fun. You know, I like to be inclusive. I think for me is that like I give people the time of day, like, and I think it's just about like that energy. I think it's just bringing that energy, and like people always say, it's just like just bring the best people around. You know, and
Mm-hmm.
I think people that come out to our shows, that come out to my show, it's always kind of like something can be said about like the energy that and also just good connecting. I love connecting dots. I love introducing people together. I believe I have a very strong network, but not just for me, but also for them. You know, it's like I love like introducing my friends because, you know, magic can happen and magic has
Yeah.
happened. And
And your
so,
vibe attracts your tribe too. I love that saying.
yeah, no, for
Yeah.
sure. And that also, I think, just like the piano element. And I still
Mm.
haven't had like a live show, which is one thing that I'm really working on that I'm trying to do with this
Yeah, I was
upcoming.
gonna ask about that. Yeah, you got to
That's
showcase that talent.
listen, I got the piano right here. You can kind of see it right
There you
here.
go, baby. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's been like, you know, just really trying to like emphasize like all of my musicality and my background and putting that into my sets. And the other
Mm.
thing is just also like the music that I like listening to. You know, I think for me it's like there's something to be said about, you know, kind of like my influences and like having grown up with classical music and grown
Yeah.
up with like film scoring, jazz, musical theater, and all these things, and like kind of knowing like what resonates with me. Like when I go on like dives, crate dives to find music, you know, it's like I know like I can listen to a song for like 5 seconds and I know like if it's like speaking to my
I
soul.
remember sitting with you and you literally said the same thing. You were like, I can listen to a song for 5 seconds and I know if it's going to be good. And I'm kind of the same way. And I think we have that in common with, right? Like our gift of curation, our passion for it. You talk about a lot of your classical influences, but who are a few of your like electronic influences besides Pete Tong? Who else was kind of big for you either growing up or even today?
Yeah, so back then there was there's this amazing group that I forget the name right now.
That's must not
But
be that amazing. No.
all right, Bondax. There you go, Bondax.
Yeah.
Funny enough, they're managed by Pete Tong's daughter, and they
Mm.
came to LA once. It was amazing meeting them. But like they had them. Moon Boots was great. Moon Boots was like one of the
Yes.
first show I've seen at Sound. It's like my first. It was also my first time being guest listed VIP. For WB, thank you. But I brought two of my friends and we were like in the back, and like he just did like a live show. And I just remember that night just being so magical because the
I
music
love
was
him.
great.
Yeah. He's great.
Um, and then like loved. I mean, even like when I started working with Pete and being like around more like musical artists, but you know, people. I mean, even Phantoms. To be honest, Phantoms I discovered like in college, like later college, early days in LA, and I just really loved their music. They have like this really good song "Vérité" with "Vérité," and you know, it kind of goes hand in hand with all of like the majestic, casual YouTube playlist I used to listen to religiously
Mm.
back in the day as well. So I've kind of had like a lot of like these like electronic influences. But then as DJs, like you know, obviously like the iconic like Dead Mouse, Cascade, you know, Skrillex. Skrillex was actually my first rave. I was like in 2011.
Mm.
I was like, yeah, I was 18. It was my first rave, and so I just loved like the live like proponent of things.
Yeah.
You know, I was always listening to like a lot of music, and you know, I've never been really good at like names and like remembering pieces and stuff like that. But it's just like I've always kind of been more of like when I hear music, I know, you know, so I know the
Yeah.
songs and like that. That's always
Absolutely.
done like a
It
really
hits you. It hits you somewhere in the feels,
yeah.
in the loins, whatever it is. Um, what production of yours are you the most proud of, and why is it our song "Satisfied" that we did together? I'm just kidding.
I mean, that production is heavy. Like, just I think I just love coming on and just like ultimately, I already had like some ideas for like the chords and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I think
That one was interesting because I had already been working on that with our friend Vinny Disco, and
yeah,
I remember you literally you came over to my apartment in Santa Monica, and I was like, I need help with like, I think I needed help with a bass line or something. I just couldn't figure it out, and you just kind of pop in there, you get on my little MIDI keyboard, and you just like get to work, and the trajectory of that song changed so much from what it was. I think maybe I forget the inception of it. Vinny might have had something he was working on, then he threw it to me, and I tagged in, and and it just morphed into this thing, and it was great. And I think it did pretty well for you know, all things considered, and knowing what I know now in the you know, promotion, you know, side of things and the marketing side of things, you know, we definitely I think did well, all things considered. But like, talk to me
yeah,
about, you know, some other pieces you're proud of. I mean, I will say, like, your new track, right, Touch,
yeah.
which
Touch.
came out that came out
Weeks ago,
two
a few
weeks
weeks
ago.
ago, 2 weeks ago.
I no joke was preparing for this podcast last night. I put it on, and then I took a shower, and I was singing it in the shower, and then I came back to like get ready for bed, and it was like just stuck in my head. So like, you did a really good job getting, getting that vocal hook that'll get stuck in your head. The production's really clean on it. And it's released on Phantom's label. So, any quick stories about how that came to be, how you got connected with, is it Naya for the vocals?
So, Touch started so different. And I mean, this was like one of the first songs that I produced. Cause I mean, 4 years ago, like when we say that I started 4 years ago, that was truly like, cause I was like, obviously I have the music background, but like started DJing from scratch 4 years ago. I mean, not even 4 years ago, but like really started to learn how to produce like actual like music that's like that can stand like a DJ set, because when you're DJing, it's like, okay, like you want your stuff to like be as good as like what you're gonna play next and before, right? So it's like, there's a lot of like different tips and tricks, and hats off to SNBRN for being one of my greatest mentors still to this day. He really took me under his wing and like showed me how to produce, gave me my first set of samples and gave me some plugins. He's like, yo, let's do it. I started being like his piano guy. So like on his last album, I was just like playing the keys, and I remember like it always looked so crazy. Like I felt so bad because some of our sessions, like we would be like having a session for literally 15 hours, like nonstop. And I would just be like asleep on the couch. I was like, okay, I've done my part. I've played the piano. I'll let you do. I was trying to follow what he was doing. But those first few months, it was really hard. I was like, also he's a wizard, he's working really fast and stuff. And like even before, like I had sessions in LA before, even with other producers, but it was hard for me to focus on like what's going on in production. So it was really during COVID that I sat down and been like, okay, this is kind of like how I use a compressor. This is how I use EQ like the right way. This is how like I add like delay and reverb and like figuring out all these different like tips and tricks that you can have. So, it's definitely been a long journey for me these past 4 years. But then, with Touch, when Touch came about, this was like maybe the summer of 2022. So I had already been like a year into like doing like a year or two doing more like production work. And I made the song, and I initially wanted that it's okay, it's art, now I'm gonna make it, like from Whitney Houston. That was like the first song I was hearing. But then somehow I thought for some reason that song was like Touch My Body, like, and I missed and I just put that on YouTube, got the acapella, and it actually just worked out. I was like, wait, I actually love that song. And but the acapella sounded like shit, so I had to get like a better vocal. And then Naya came along maybe like a year after I was working on the song. It was like a very long process. Like that song like was like 2.5 years in the making.
Well, I remember you even played that during our set of Pizza and Techno, and it sounded very different back then, So it's got a nice groove to it. I like the percussion in it. Obviously the hook is great. So what happened with Naya? You guys met, and
Naya was like, I met her at the time I was working at WME. Like a lot of people I met in LA was during that time. And she was artist relations at Winston House. And so at the time she was doing a lot of shows there. Through her I met Corry. And I mean, this was like, Winston House is like a whole thing now in Venice club. It's a very successful restaurant club venue. But it used to be like a house party at this guy's house, Corry. And then, he kind of got more involved with like the Venice community, and he started helping out with like the Venice Fest and all of that. And so she was kind of like helping with like artist relations. And that's how I met Naya. And then, but she's also an amazing singer. And with our other friend, Brandon, who actually introduced her to, because I was doing music with him back in the day too, but like more like singer-songwriter kind of music, where I was again playing the piano, and we had like other vocalists, but it was more like pop or whatever. And he was kind of like, playing the guitar. Another really successful and like talented producer now. We kind of like, he got started, I kind of got him in like production and stuff like that, and now he's a platinum producer traveling across the US with his artists. But we were like this trio, and we've just kind of been like really good friends. And so for this I was like, there's no better, like
tap in.
We went to Brandon's house, and then we did the damn thing one session.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for sharing that. It's a great song. Everyone listening, go listen to Touch, and honestly, listen to Kaya's his whole back catalog, and check out our song Satisfy, because I'm proud of it too. But I want to just kind of get some questions from like the brain of Kai out there, as we kind of wrap up. You're probably going to be my longest episode ever, and you should be proud of that. So like, I'm very like very goal oriented, both for myself and, I help artists think of, what are your goals? What are your passions? Like, what are you doing this all for? Right. So I'm curious, what kind of goals do you have for yourself, short, medium, long term? Do you write them down? Do you ever go back? And if you do write them down, do you ever go back and kind of reassess and maybe morph them? Like, what's your kind of like goal setting and process like?
Yeah, I used to. I mean, another great thing that I did is like using my calendar as like my Bible. So like I
Sure.
have a
Me too.
check-in every day where, I mean, WME days, it's like I wanted to, again, another way that Pete really influenced me was that, I was scheduling his life. I mean, not all of his life, but like a lot of his meetings in LA. And so, every time he had a meeting, I wanted to have like, it's like, well, I'm going to meet their assistant or whoever he's meeting, so it's like always on like the assistant level. And it was always like, I just love the idea of having like this busy calendar, And so for me, it
Sure.
was always kind of like, I need to fill up my days with, I need to be meeting people. I need to be doing this and that. And so also
Same.
same with like goal setting, it was kind of like, let me, have, whatever goals in mind, I have them on the calendar. And so I can, or like on my notes or something like that. I mean,
Sure.
now, I do that a little less. Not saying that I'm not as busy, but it's just kind of like, I don't have to meet as many people now as I used to, like 6-7 years
Right.
ago.
But
Um,
for your artist project
yeah,
specifically, right? Like, you're spending a lot of time in the studio. You're spending time on promoting your music. You're spending time, getting gigs and finding gig opportunities. Like, what are you really truly working towards? Like, what is the big grand vision for Kaya Music and your projects?
yeah. So with my fascination of like people and just like, I think seeing that it is possible to have a music career and
Mm,
like travel and kind of seeing what some close friends are doing as well, that it is very reachable. Back then growing up, it was like, if you're a musician, you're going to be like the starving artist. And I wish that rhetoric would change
right.
because, it's not like it is possible. And every industry you're in is going to be,
Yes.
competitive no matter what. So you
Let's
might
let's
as well,
just yes, let's scream that from the rooftop. It is possible to make money in music.
yeah, like everything.
um,
So for me, it's like, being from France, my parents from Africa, or Congo and Cameroon specifically, and, having lived in the US and Canada. And it's like, I just have, and having friends all over the world. It's like, for me, I love to travel. For me, like really being on a plane is like, my first time on a plane was moving to America. And
yeah.
it's such like a symbol of like, of just growth and change, opportunity. And like, just, I don't know. I can't see the tab, but what is that?
Well, it was my attempt. Me relating to you even more. It's my only tattoo is a disco ball globe that
Nice.
combines my two passions for travel and music. And I got that when I
Mhm.
was traveling in South America for 3 months and meeting all these people. And the most bonds, the closest bonds I was forming were with people through music. So, not to take away from your story, but
But
definitely can
that's
relate.
exactly it. I just want to like be able to connect with people, be able to like spend more time in France because I have family there, and we're just all getting older, and it's kind of like, wow, like I can't just be cooped up in one
Yeah.
spot and like not spending more time with my family that I would love to like have more time with. So it's like I feel like just music is my vehicle to do that, and like
So
if I could
yeah,
do it around
so
the
travel the
weekend,
world through music and
and
playing
music,
and all those opportunities.
yeah,
Do you have any
exactly.
like do you have any like you're a performer and you're a producer
Mhm.
as an artist, right? So like do you have any goals of like playing a certain stage, or whether that's a festival, a venue, or alongside any particular artist, or do you have goals for yourself as far as like I want a record to hit gold certified, whatever it is, like, what are
Yeah.
those, some of those lofty things you have for yourself that you're trying to work towards?
I want it all. I want it
Or nothing at all, right?
Yeah,
Like the song.
all right, all or nothing.
Yeah.
No, but like obviously, I think it would be great to have like a hit.
Yeah.
I'm working towards that. I think it's just, and what is a hit? It's just like a song that people can really connect to, and
Hmm.
there's some there's some theatrics behind the scenes, if you will, like just of like a hit doesn't just become a hit. I think there's a lot to be said about like how do you promote a song for it to become a hit, and there's like a lot of things behind the scenes to make it happen. So it's also kind of learning about that. A lot of it obviously is marketing and promotion,
Yeah.
using tools like social media and
Yep.
like outreach. And it's not all social media. That's the other thing I want to talk about.
Yes. Thank
I
you.
think that, like, you know, there's a bit of like this need and this demand that it's like, oh, if you want to be an artist, you need to be posting like 4 reels a day and stuff like that. And like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not like rich and famous, you know, and I'm not like, but I can tell you that just from having worked behind the scenes, it's like, if you think about it, a lot of these artists that are on social media, it's like social media came after and they have all this reach. It's like, you need to like learn how to like build a base, like a strong foundational base. And that's just really comes from like meeting the people. You got to get out there. Like a reel can do really well and like great for you, but like that's not going to give you a career. You know what I mean? It's like, if you want a career, you need to go out there, you need to meet the people, you need to find a way to get there. And sure, you
Yes.
use social media as a tool to get you,
Yes.
but it's not like the end all be all. And you can do a lot of work. Like, look at me, like just the like already my trajectory of having worked with some of the biggest names in the industry has come from like the behind the scenes, and like it wasn't like a reel that got me these gigs. You know what I
Face
mean?
in the
So
place.
like,
Yeah. Yeah,
so
I mean, for all those listening and not watching, I'm like shaking my hands and doing this like Jesus God pose, like saluting Kaya right now, because he is saying what I've said till I'm blue in the face, and he's actually living it, right? And it's again, it's sum of parts. There's no single thing. Like when I talk to artists
mm,
as potential clients, right? I work in developing their brand and helping them get where they want to go. That's why I'm very goal oriented. But you know, some of them immediately are like, I know what my problem is. I'm like, okay, what's that? He's like, social media. I'm like, well, that's not that maybe, but like that's not the only piece of it. Like when you think of the pie as an artist, right? You're CEO of your company and you have to think about, like we said, like the product, the brand, the marketing, the sales, all that stuff. And then within the marketing pie, there's components of that. There's social media, there's email, there's I don't know, name something else. There's like actual, ticket sales, things like that, whatever it is. But, the importance of online presence is important, but it's not the only thing. And getting out in person and being a face in the place and networking and having those connections is going to get you further faster too. So it's a combination of things, and you have to massage all the parts and you have to do all the pieces. And the people who understand that and embrace it are going to get further faster. The ones who think it's just one thing or they refuse to do one of those things, that's what it is. That's why, again, why I wanted to bring up your social media, because it doesn't feel forced. It feels authentic and organic, and you're like, you're just documenting your life and you're showing you as a person. You're fashionable, you're fun, you like to go to these high class events, these car shows, these fashion things, and then you also like are just chilling, playing your piano, and and showing people that stuff too. So like,
yeah,
the more authentic you can be with that stuff, yeah, you're going to use it as a tool to promote your music and your shows and stuff, but like between those things, remembering to show people who you are. And that's how you build a fan base, right? And that's how you get people being repeat, so quote unquote customers, because the fan base, above all else, above all the streams, above the ticket sales, your fans are going to be the people who drive all that stuff. So the
yeah.
more you can build that out, the more you can interact with them and engage with them,
And,
the more
and to add
successful.
to that, I think it's also like the consistency,
Yes.
because you
Yep.
might not need to post like every day, but like even if you post like once or twice a week, but like you better believe that like for the next 30 years, you're going to be posting that day and that day a week, that you can build a really strong audience that way. I mean,
Yeah.
look at Pete Tong. Like his consistency was the radio show. Like he started doing this
Yes.
radio show like these past 30 years, but every week, no excuse, this man has a 2-hour show on the radio for the past 30 years. You know what I mean? It's kind
Yeah.
of like crazy. And
That's how
like,
I got to know him. That Essential mix was so influential in my early days, and I still even pull back some of those episodes. Yes, consistency in everything we do, right? So
yeah,
it's not just the social strategy that's consistency. It's releasing
yeah,
music consistently. It's trying to, well, I'm also a big proponent of like capturing your everything you do, right? So like if you are going to perform and you choose to take a gig and that gig is going to benefit your career, and you're not just taking a gig just to take a gig,
yeah,
documenting it and showing all that. So consistency in everything you do, and always trying to to improve, to make progress every single day. And then again, be very goal oriented. Like write your goals down and like work towards them. I love that Dua Lipa interview that I posted when she was on 60 Minutes a couple weeks ago, when she was talking about she had written down as a goal to headline Glastonbury on the Pyramid stage on the Friday night, so she could play that stage and then go party on Saturday and Sunday. And she was very specific about those goals, right? So like, the more specific you are with your goals and dreams, the more likely you are to like to know what steps to take to achieve them. So I mean, we could go on for hours here, man. Like I really appreciate all the stories you shared, and all the success you've seen today. I think like, maybe we could kind of end with sort of like advice you have for artists either just starting out or trying to get to the next level. I mean, it's such a wild west out there with music, and you've really done a great job cracking the code, working in this industry for many years, making great connections. Like, what are some really, Kaya's 3 tips to success in music?
Ooh, okay. So just depending where you're at, if you're just starting out, I would say definitely say yes to anything you can get. Because I think just getting experience, like showing up, like the experience, getting like it's just getting in the habit of doing something, and it's like you can't be too picky at first. And if you don't have any like background in entertainment, I would say, yeah, try to pick up a gig. Either do like an internship, or like, try to do like an assistant gig at like an agency or something. I think, or, management or label, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is. I just think any like job in the entertainment world, I think is great, just because then you can break sort of like the fourth wall and see
Yeah.
it's like just being in the industry, because it is kind of like an extraordinary world. There's a lot going on, but it's also like, I think a lot of people have like these misconceptions about, oh, like this big celebrity, and it's like there's only few celebrities that are actually famous or like successful, but it's a whole industry, and it's like a multi-billion-dollar industry, and like
Yes.
you don't have to be like a Tiesto level artist to have made it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, have to be like a top like billing artist on like festivals to make it. There's so many different like forms.
Success is subjective, right? And I talk to artists every single day. And not all of them want to be performers. I talked to a girl the other day who literally, she wants to build an online ecstatic dance company with metal music, and she wants to perform, but only on camera and not in front of a crowd, So like,
Yeah.
success is subjective. Everybody's got different goals. And I think, your point about like learning the business and figuring out how to like learn it firsthand is really important. I actually I went on a rant on Threads last night, and I was just like, the more people I talk to, as I grow my brand in this space, like the more people I talk to, the more I realize who understands the industry and who doesn't, and the people who take the time to learn it and do their research and experience it are the ones that are going to be more successful. Versus a guy, I'm not kidding, DM'd me last night on my Racket House page, and he goes, "Yo, just the guy I'm looking for. Listen to my song." And I'm like, "Okay, you know how many people ask me to listen to their music these days? What are you asking me?" He's like, "Just listen to it, and we can make tons. I don't have any money right now, but we can make tons of money together. I could guarantee we'll make money together." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, and he's like, "Just listen to it, man. Like, if you don't like it, that's on me." And I was like, I listened to it, and I was like, "Unfortunately, man, it's not for me. I run a business here, blah, blah, blah." And he's like, "Well, fuck your business. Fuck you." Like, he just
Oh,
started getting
oh,
so
shit.
like, he's like, "I'm going to remember this." And I'm like, "Remember what? You came to me asking me for a favor. I said I didn't like it, and he just blew the F up at me. He's like, "What business? Like, I'm like," and I literally wrote to him. I was like, "The reason you're not going to make it in music is because you don't treat yourself like a business as an artist." And that's what they have to think about. So sorry to take away from your question and answer there, but it really set me off. Any other quick pieces of tips,
Well, that's
recommendation before we sign off here?
another really good point. Your reputation is key. Like this, and
Mm-hmm.
the other thing about this industry is that it is tiny. Like it is actually
Yeah.
really. It's kind of scary how
Yeah.
small it is. I mean, especially in LA, it's like after a couple years of networking, like you will go to a party and you will run into at least one person that you know.
Yeah.
You meet people and they're supposedly strangers, but then you go on Instagram and you have like 100 mutual friends. You're like, wow, like, can't get away. So like, I'll just say that like, as you're telling me just the story about this man, it's like, like word travels really fast, and you just don't want to
Yeah.
have a bad reputation. Like that's gonna be like that's like a killer right there. So like
In
always kind
any industry, but
of
especially music. Yeah. For as big
that's
as it is, it's super small. And
just have
yeah,
grace, burn bridges, and even if you're getting like the short end of the stick, let like karma will take care of business. This world is small enough that like you don't need to worry about that. And like I really believe that. I think that like just be you, just always like take the higher road, don't go low. And yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, it's a working relationship. You work with people, you're working with like humans, and like you just got to treat people with respect and like respect their time, and you will go a long way.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, out of respect for your time, which you've given a lot of today, and honestly,
Bye.
man, like
For another hour, man.
super appreciate you. Again, all the stories you told, all the inspiration you provided. I'm still very humbled to be, your friend and collaborator. And like I said, you were somebody on my short list of people that I wanted to talk to from an artist perspective, just because of all the success you've seen in such a relatively short amount of time, and what's next for you is crazy. And everybody out there, pay attention to Kaya, listen to his music, go see him live, tune into his social media. It's super entertaining. And yeah, we'll take a quick. I do a screenshot at the end, so just like smile and do something cool to the camera, and I'll take it. Yeah,
Let's go.
let's go. Kaya, JP, Jean-Philippe. Thank you again, everybody listening. Thank you again. It's a long one, but hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Racket House Podcast.
Thank you, guys.